Welcome to another episode of Cloud9 Talk. I had to hold it down for my host. He at work right now. He on summer break right now. But like I said, the grind don't stop though on this pod though. What a hell of a game though this past yesterday, last night though, man. That was a hell of a comeback by the Pacers in the fourth quarter. They've been doing it all year. So like I said, it's gonna be real interesting to see how OKC regroup after that. They thought they had it in the bag. They was up by 15 points at 1 minute in the fourth quarter. Came back, Pacers, they know what they doing, man. They some dogs. They like the old school Dunbar team that just press up on you, play hard all game, and they wear you down. And that's when the fatigue starts to set in. Because like I said, OKC, they got a good pace, good defense, but keep this stat in mind. They had committed Pacers had committed 25 turnovers, and OKC only scored off 4 points off them turnovers. That's very alarming. Now, usually OKC they do a lot of points on turnovers and steals, but there was some of them steals they was getting fouled on. So they OKC I mean Pacers did a good job of stopping that transition. That's where a lot of points come from. OKC often points off turnovers, the transition. They just come out of nowhere, trap you from all corners of the half court, pick you up full court, and it's really tough to really adjust to that, especially at this back two of the game. You see Obi Toppin had three first turnovers in the first quarter as soon as he got in the game. But one thing I say about that, he finished with 17 points, 5 for 8 from 3 point. So shout out to you, Obi Toppin. Dayton Flyer, Midwest. He represent the Midwest, even though he ain't from Dayton, from New York. But still, he represent the Midwest. He's from Dayton, Ohio, in my book. But anyways, I'll say this: he put, hey, young players, pay attention to how Obi Toppin responded though, because like I said, he responded with just class and just hey, I'm gonna dig myself out this hole. And he's part of the reason why they won, making shots down the stretch. And also, the Pacers shot 18 for 46 from 3 point. They shot over 41% on the road in game one of the NBA Finals. That's pretty impressive on any night, regular season, first round, second round, Eastern Conference Finals. Doesn't matter. 18 threes in a playoff game or any game, that's impressive though. So to do that on the road, you got to shout out to them though. Like I said, it's gonna be a hard far out series. Like a lot of people thought it was gonna be five. Maybe this may be the only game Pacers get. We don't know. We thought that last series when New York blew it game one. That changed the series. So this might be the same scenario. We gonna see though. Like I said, both teams are young. We forget. OKC struggled with a banged up Denver team. And a lot of people thought the Clippers would sneak up and beat OKC if they beat Denver. But my thing is, if Denver beat Clippers, why are we talking about the Clippers? What are we talking about? The Clippers are too slow for OKC. They'd have run them out the gym, in my personal opinion. But I'll say this though, Shea, he gotta be a little bit more efficient because I think he shot like 6 for 16 in the first half. They shot a lot of jump shots and they was missing. I think that OKC only had 11 threes out of I want to say 36 attempts. They shot under 30%. So you're at home. You're not getting your points off turnovers because that's usually when they go on runs where it's like a close game and they just it's like I'm not surprised the Pacers really won today because like I said, if I was a bet man, I would have had the Pacers plus 10. That means plus 10 for all people that don't bet. That's like when you basically bet on the Pacers to lose by 10 or less, you win your money. If they go 10 or over, you lose your money. So I know a lot of people probably had the Thunder blowing them out or winning by 10 or more. Well, Hallie said, no, not today. So like I said, it's going to be very, very interesting. The odd makers in Vegas, they want to spruce up the everything as far as just like, all right, okay, see this. They said it's one of the largest favors in betting history. But hey, I'll say this though, the underdog always has a fighter's chance to win. You know, a lot of people think Mike Beasley is going to beat Lance Stevenson. Hey, you still got to put the ball in the hoop now. Nothing's guaranteed. The only thing you can guarantee is bills, death, and losses. So I probably just made that up, but that's okay though. I'm Coach Claude, I can do that. But like I said, man, OKC though. Another key thing I thought that was kind of weird was how Mark Daigneault started Kassan Wallace over Hartenstein. Now he hasn't did that all year. Hassan Wallace starts his first playoff game. It's pretty cool. But in the finals, though, as a second year player, stick what you need to do. Y'all the favorite. Why are you switching up your lineups in the NBA finals before the series even happens? So, remember, the Pacers are bigger than what people think. When you're that big, they're sneaky big. They don't have a lot of 7-footers. They got a lot of mobile bigs, 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", all come with their feet. Thomas Bryant can shoot. Miles Turner can shoot. Obi Toppin can shoot. They got a couple bigs missing. Isaiah Evans, Jarius Walker. They can shoot too as well. They're athletic. Enrique Freeman, he can knock down shots. So it's like they got a stable full of bigs that can hurt you in many different ways. They not really big post up players and trying to get you Shaq, 2000 post moves. No, they're going to spread the court, hit mid range shots. I think Miles Turner played good down the stretch, had finished with 15 points, shot pretty good from the field, 2 3. Thomas Bryant had, he's coming off the bench making plays. TJ McConnell, that bench play, it really matters in the playoffs. It's showing you how much depth really matters in the playoffs. Because, like I said, if you can't win with your key guys, some guys got to step up and win your games. And I feel like Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, Ben Shepherd, them guys, they pulled it together, though. Pascal Siakam, I thought he didn't play his best game, but when I was looking at the box score, he shot 7 for 15. And, that's pretty good. That's almost 50%, finished with 19. I think with Pascal, they have to find them mismatches. You have to find them easy buckets in the first half because they was getting stripped a lot. 25 turnovers, and you still won a game. That's alarming. I once had a game on my first Division II game, shout out to Notre Dame College. We was down 20 with 5 minutes left to Slippery Rock. And that was like, a very, very, it was our first game together as a group, all these transfers coming in. And like I said, we just pulled it together, made turnovers for the other team, pressed them, pressure burst pipes. So, sometimes you keep wearing those teams down, you never know what's going to happen during that fourth quarter, though. That's money time. And then let's get to Halliburton. Halliburton, he kind of started off kind of slow, but, he was making timely buckets. He's a clutch player. And like I said, I think he's a superstar. Maybe I'm a little biased because I'm from the Midwest. I seen him play at Iowa State. I think he's one of the best guards in the league. If he's not in your top 3, what are you talking about? See, people get caught up in the scoring and all this. Oh, he got to put up 30. Oh, he got to shoot up threes. Oh, he got to do this. Dribble, dribble. Man, that man is orchestrating our offense. They were the 4th seed in the East. No one had them coming out. Some people probably didn't have them come out the first round. Some people definitely didn't have them come out the second round, which the Cavs. Now, look what they're doing. They're coming in, shocking the world game 1. So now all the pressure is on OKC. Game 2, it's gonna be very, very interesting to see how OKC really, really makes those adjustments. Because like I said, they turned the ball over. Defensively, they played great. You turn the ball, you make a team turn the ball over 25 times, it can't get better than that. I don't know what else you can say. Now, you have to really make your jump shots. You got to get your steals. Sometimes you may have to convert more open threes. You only made 11 threes. So, that's kind of like, okay, OKC wasn't the greatest shooting team, but you may need to want to, play like guys like Isaiah Joe or Wiggins, spread that court out, play that OKC ball. Put Jalen Williams in there, throw some bodies in there. Because I said the Pacers are big. You want to play Hassan Wallace on Pascal Siakam. Okay, good luck with that, AC Caruso did his thing, man. He gonna play his heart out. I wish my Lakers still would have kept him. But hey, I'll take AC over Reeves right now. He just plays both ends in the court. I'm a defensive guy. I need guys that can make plays on both ends. And what he does is a game changer. But back to the OKC, they got to rally back the troops, though. They got too comfortable. And in sports, you get too comfortable, you're on cruise control, like, hey, what be the money? Hey, that can't haunt you, though, especially in that fourth quarter, ain't nothing guaranteed in sports except losses and heartbreak. Only thing you can guarantee is you can show up and play. Like I said, best team always doesn't win the championship. I'm not saying, it's only game 1, but still, though, it's kind of, alarming that, like, all right, they were that comfortable in game 1 and they lost. But they did it. They lost game 1 in the Denver series. So I can't even fault them for that. Even though it went 7 and, they was young and experienced, but they grew up that series. So we're going to see. Because like I said, they didn't play terrible. They just lost composure towards the end. Like I said, we seen it with New York. We seen it with Boston. These playoffs has been crazy. Denver, they did it to OKC. So like these playoffs it's just been so unpredictable. And like as a sports fan, NBA fan for majority of my life, it's good basketball to see. It's starting to feel like March Madness because like I said, these past playoffs been kind of it just you just never know what's going to happen. Like it's just crazy, and we just want to appreciate the game as far as you can because like I said, these series are man, it's must watch TV, man. So I think the Pacers they got a shot to win Game 2 as well. They're coming in with confidence. They did it in New York, they did it in Cleveland. So we gonna see, man. They've been the underdogs in every series. They're pretty comfortable of really playing this style of basketball and just come from behind because sometimes you maybe play better from playing from behind. But Hallie, he's the best quarterback in the game right now. Even though it's basketball, he plays like a quarterback. He gets everybody involved. He needs his teammates to win, not his teammates need him to win. Obviously, he's the leader, but when he's aggressive, hey, they're a hard team to stop. That pace is hard to really, really maintain, especially in the playoffs where everything is so physical and rugged. But they're physical too, though. They not soft. Them hard. He hit that nice three towards the when it was 102, 108. Hey man, you gotta make some adjustments. And I want to pull up some stats right here. So one thing I'll say about OKC, they got out rebounded by almost 20, 56 to 39. That's bad. You cannot lose that rebounding battle that bad. I think that's another thing back to that Kassan Wallace and switching out Hartenstein, losing rebounding. Chet, he's okay. Chet got to play better too, though. He's been quiet too as well. Though he only finished what I want to say 6 points, 2 for 9, 9 rebounds. Most of them rebounds was off, his misses or other people's misses. They crashed the board hard. Like I say, OKC played. They didn't play bad, but they could have played better to close the game out. And like I said, it's the NBA Finals. I remember Shaq was saying, "Hey, this is not no regular game. It's the NBA Finals. Every game can haunt you. So like this game, one particularly can probably haunt the Thunder if they don't get these next two games, because it's going back to Indy, and you know how Indy get. Indy get crazy. You got Mike Epps, Terry Crews, Pat McAfee, cussing up people in the stands. So it's gonna be interesting to see how these guys operate. And like I said, man, that was a great game, man. I thought it was gonna be a snooze fest for a minute. I'm like, dang, man, Pacers, they can't, they was just struggling in the half court. They was switching everything, and it matched up pretty well. Siakam was struggling to get his shot off versus Naismith. So like I said, it's gonna be a lot of key matchups though. I think it's gonna be a higher scoring game though. Game 2, I think teams had the nerves, and it was just a lot of jittery and stuff like that though. But like, it's gonna be very, very interesting to see how both teams really come out because, like I said, the Pacers come out swinging. It's gonna get very interesting. But like I said, SGA, he's the MVP. So like I said, we're gonna see how he makes those adjustments and really you know see what MVP does. Because like I said, all the pressure is on you when you win or lose. It all falls on the MVP and the coach. So Mark Daigneault, you're a young coach, so we're gonna see what type of coach you are. You're gonna really get in your coaching bag. We seen what you did versus Minnesota and Denver. Even though Denver was two man down almost really with AG with the hamstring and Michael Porter Jr. with the shoulder injury as well. So this is a healthy Pacer team as well too. So it's the game of chess. Different styles. But one thing you can say about the Pacers, people don't give the Pacers their respect. They play hard every possession. If you're a young guy, you got to play hard every possession. They're playing the right way. They moving the ball. They're not over dribbling. The only guy that maybe over dribble is Ben McLaren. And he's one of those guys, the outliners in that on that team where he just has to get his own bucket. That's what he does. He don't need anyone to get him a bucket. He's gonna go downhill, and that's a key thing right there. I didn't think he played well, but he's gonna play well. And I thought Mark Daigneault kind of played a weird, funky lineup. He had the rookie out of UC Santa Barbara, AJ Mitchell. I'm not really the biggest fan of him. I seen him play in last year versus the Big Boy. Shout out to DJ Brewington. I didn't really think he was all, he was good, but I thought my guy DJ Brewington was I thought he should be in the NBA personally. Now I may be biased, but like I said, he came in, played 4 minutes, was 0 for 3. So, he missed a shot every time he was on the court. And like I said, hey, this ain't the regular season. It's not the first round, second round, Western Conference Final. This is the NBA Finals, people. The NBA Finals. This is not. It's not that type of game. The stakes is too high. You have 4 games to win. You blew one. So people talking about, yeah, this is the dynasty team. This is the best defense since the 90s Bulls. Well, okay. Yeah, you turned it over 25. You made the Pacers turn over 25 times, but you only scored 4 points. So, those turnovers kind of cancel themselves out. So, you have to capitalize on them turnovers. And that's one thing you have to look at. Because, if they don't turn the ball over, Pacers might, be, win by more if they don't turn the ball over, half those turnovers. And another thing, OKC only, I'm gonna put these stats back up, only had 13 assists to 7 turnovers. Now, 13 assists in you can get that in a half. Hell, you can get that in a quarter if you really, really want to pass the ball. So, they gotta move the ball better. I feel like they missed a lot of jump shots. They didn't take advantage of, putting them in foul trouble. And now, that's how the OKC play, like they go downhill. So I think they kind of settle for too many open threes that a lot of guys usually will make. But Shea took a lot of crazy off balance mid range, the little funky mid range off balance 1 foot shots he be doing. Ain't no wrong with it, but it's the finals, so every shot matters. A missed shot could be a bad shot, which could lead to a turnover. So like to me, in my opinion, bad shot equals turnover. So that may even add on to the turnover margin in that case, though. So, like I said, it's gonna be very, very interesting though to see how both teams make adjustments. And like I said, it's gonna be really, really, really interesting to see how Halliburton comes out. Because when he gets it going with the Heliante, so he's gonna make his mark though. Like I said, he's capable of doing Magic Johnson-esque shots. 'Cause, like, this is a legacy series, really. Halliburton. SGA, they are on one of the most historic paths in the NBA history. They almost won 68 games, 2 games from winning 70. So that's pretty impressive. A lot of teams can't do it, especially in my lifetime. I only seen really the Warriors, maybe the Miami Heat close to doing that in 2013, almost 12 years ago. So like I said, man, this is a lot of good basketball going on, and we gotta appreciate these young guys. I know people like to say LeBron, Curry, and KD. Everybody always want them in the same guys in the finals. That's cool and all that for ratings, but like as a real hooper, you gotta really appreciate the game of like just like this is an artwork, man. This is the new lens of basketball, and people gotta take them old lenses off and put the new lenses on. Put your shade, put your Celine, Ray-Ban, whatever you wear. I'm a Celine type of guy. Celine, shout out to No Cap. But anyways, we gotta just appreciate this playoff basketball. Basketball is meant to be fun. It's not meant to be everybody just watch, 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 dribble, dribble, dribble. And that's one thing I want to get into today. Another topic, though, is about the state of youth basketball in the USA. I think it's the training culture is kind of making it real robotic, and also we need more creativity in this game. Like you see, SGA, he's a player that plays with a lot of creativity. There's no one really in the league that really plays like SGA. He can do it all. He can pass, shoot, dribble. He's a 3 level scorer. Not really the best 3 point shooter, but like if he gets it going, he's unstoppable. Now, the difference between SGA and let's say Anthony Edwards, who we just seen last series, they calling him Camp Man. Well, he's looking like a Camp Man right now. I'm like I said, I'm a fan of him, but like I'm an SGA guy personally. I like guys with bags, guys that can get it done, make different moves. They're not doing the same move on a different defense, they're gonna switch it up every time. So you gotta really, really look at that, key in on that, because you know when you get to get in different packages in different spots of the court, it's not always about doing a step back three. That's not a good shot all the time. It's all well getting downhill, setting your man up, play chess out there, not checkers. And that's a lot of things why Americans are kind of getting smoked in the awards situation. Like we haven't had a American MVP in almost 10 years, it's a decade. That's crazy. Two from Giannis, one from SGA, three from Joker, one from Embiid. Like I said, it's getting spooky out here. Really, really getting spooky out here. So, I want to say James Harden in 2019 or 2018 was the last MVP, from America. And like I said, that's very alarming. USA basketball, we need to, get back to the fundamentals. It's not all about the highlight culture, dribble this, dribble that. Like I said, we got to get back to doing what we do best, and that's play fundamentally sound basketball. One thing I like to teach my guys that I work out with sometimes, from time to time, keep the game simple. Just, one jab step. Set your man up. You ain't got to dribble 500 times to get your shot off and all that. And also be accountable, man. It's all about being accountable. I was talking to a high school coach yesterday, and he was telling me, his best player, he listens, but he always has something to say back. You don't always have to say something back, just, listen, man. One of the greatest gifts about me is I'll say I'm a great listener. I can listen to anybody, I can learn from anybody. You should always, just have an open ear. You don't know everything. I don't know everything. That's why, I love to have people on here and so I can learn from others, and they hopefully they can learn from me as well. I love basketball, but I like to learn from others that love basketball. So always be teachable, and just go outside and hoop, man. You ain't got to be in the gym working out, doing the same robotic moves, no intensity, first cones or chairs, or just somebody that's undersized. Go out there and hoop, man. Find some good competition, be competitive. Use your, your instincts. Use your competitive juices. Act like your SEA is. Act like your Halliburton out there. Do whatever you want to do out there as far as playing the right way. Don't just be out there running from the smoke, man, and be competitive. That's another thing. Americans, we are too laid back. We're too chill. We don't like to, go through the adversity, the grind. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. Man, listen, man. I once slept in the gym, and when I was at Fordham, that's how bad I wanted it. So it's all about you want it. Some of these Europeans, they coming from the trenches. We kind of live in lavish, drinking champagne, wearing purple, chrome heart, true religion, polo, all that. I mean, it's cool to look good. I like to look good too. I'm a good looking dude now. But sometimes you gotta put on your hard hat, your steel toe boots when it's coming to, on that court, man. Ain't time to be pretty. Ain't time to be, getting your nails done. Get it sexy. Nah, it's time to get that work in, man. You gotta put your hard hat on, just grind though. But that's not going in all my little rants though. And I also, I want to talk about Tibbs being fired. Hey man, it's a tough job to win in the NBA. Really, like in general, basketball is one of the toughest sports, really jobs in general to coach, just especially in today's era. You have to deal with parents, agents, advisors, other coaches trying to take your players. That's has nothing to do with the NBA. This is just the landscape of coaching in general. So, like, imagine the NBA where it's a player empowerment league, which is fine, but sometimes I feel like they have too much power, and sometimes too much power can create a lot of chaos. Like I seen the New York Knicks day before Tibbs got fired. They was partying, celebrating. So like, and that's the guy that brought everybody together. Traded 5 first round picks for Miles Bridges, Michael Bridges. I don't think he was worth 5, maybe 3. Like I said, he's a good player, but when you're on a losing team and you bring the best player from a losing team, you got to make sure they knock out all that losing mentality, Even though he came from things, but he hadn't been in the playoffs in years. So Bridges kind of feeling, entitlement. He scored over 22 points across the water in Brooklyn, BK. But that's cool and fine and dandy. But Tiz is an old school coach, and sometimes you got to adjust. And I feel like the difference between Tibbs and Rick Carlisle adjusted because I was hearing, a lot of people from the 2011 Dallas Mavericks team that Carlisle coached, they wasn't too fond of him. But now you see the Pacers, the young team, they more free flowing. He's not dictating. I remember Rondo and Rick Carlisle, they was getting into it. So it all comes down to just how can you adjust. And if you're not able to adjust yourself as a coach, as a man, as a player, woman, child, bumblebee, steak, lobster, I don't care, whatever you are. You got to make adjustments. That's what it's about. You can't stay stagnant. And I feel like, the Boston Celtics series and Knicks series kind of showed you how behind the Knicks really was for winning a championship. They was getting blown out every game. And the first two games, they came back to wins. And then that's hard to, do that. And you see what happened to them this past season in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, they couldn't really just bounce back, and they only playing 6, 7, 8 guys. Man, it's not college. They playing over 100 games now, including the playoffs. So, especially with these deep playoff runs. Tibbs got to, sometimes, it may take a year off. Maybe you should go to college, It's basically pro basketball now. Hell, you're giving out billions of dollars. Hell, it might be a $10 million in NIL soon. So you always got to make those adjustments, man. And just, hey, always look in the mirror. I feel like, sometimes when you feel like you made a deep run, you're not as close as you think you are. So I feel like New York, they need to switch up the style. Like, when I was watching Brunson play, it kind of reminded me of the 2011 Bulls with Derrick Rose. He was just so ball centric. But this Knicks team actually has more talent than that Bulls team they're playing against the Miami Heat with LeBron James and Big Three. So Brunson, he has to look, he has to change himself. His dad, I know his dad, big dog, second man in control. But it's always about adjustment, man. You always gotta control everything and just be adaptable. I think one thing about me is that when I was in my coaching career, I was always like a chameleon. I could adapt to any situation. So you have to change with times or you will get left. And that's why I feel like that Tibbs got let go because he was stubborn, not a bad coach, hell of a coach. I think the only thing he missing on his resume is a ring. That's all he need. Because like I said, he's known more than some coaches that has championships. Tom Thibodeau. So, he'll figure it out. I feel like, just got to reset. And, I wonder, what's next for the Knicks as far as who they're going to hire. I'm hearing now Johnny Bryant from the Cavs. I think, he's a good, solid brother, African-American male. That, good energy, younger voice too. I don't see Mike Malone really fitting in New York. His voice is too scraggy for me. It's kind of annoying. I think the media would tear him up. He was talking a lot in Denver. You get that off in Denver, but hey, it's the Big Apple, buddy. They'll pull up on you. So it's a different type of environment. And but he's a veteran, but we'll see though. And really, he has to get along with the GM too as well. All that riff and all that. Everybody has an agenda, and the Knicks, they're ready to win now. So depending how West Side West and Leon Road, hey, they may need to call me for a player. I got you. Call who's consulting, baby. You feel me? But hey, I want to say my last topic though is NBA coach's job safe or losing or winning? Because like I said, it seems like more coaches are getting fired or having winning situations, and it's kind of weird, to see coaches that win Coach of the Year. We've seen it before, but like now it's like we've seen Memphis, Denver, Sacramento, Phoenix. That's four coaches, four that fired right in the middle of the season, right before the playoffs. So like I said, that's just unheard of, though. You gotta really, really, just take a deep dive and like, damn, is it really the coaches or is it the front office? And I feel like front offices are really making it hard on coaches and really young guys. That's what you're killing. Though, these coaches are bringing these young, drafting these talent every year, and now you kind of got to restart. That young guy may not know where he's at because he lost the person that brought him in. In a new direction, might just kind of trade him, or you just never know. So, like I said, you kind of got to be mindful of the decision making you do with these firings of coaches. Like, I wonder how Memphis is going to adjust. Like, after hiring that coach, it took him to the playoffs, but I didn't really think he did the best job. Now, like Ottoman in Denver, he got he held his own, but he needs a little more control of that locker room. You shouldn't have your best player controlling the huddle all the time. You need that that sensei, that Mr. Miyagi. Like, hey man, hold on, young grasshopper. I got you, Daniel-san. I got you, I got you. Wait on, Joker. Got you. But I'm just playing around though. But hey man, appreciate y'all. Listen to me. Cuz and the rest of my guests, they'll be back. I had to do a little early. You want to get some content out. So, like, share, subscribe. Cloud Hoops Console YouTube page, Facebook page, IG page, Cloud9 _talk, IG page, man. Appreciate y'all, man. Y'all be easy, man. Have a blessed weekend.